You're listening to The Jay Barker Show on Tide 100.9 in Tuscaloosa.
Welcome to the middle of your Wednesday as we bring you Big Noon Sports, as you just heard, Matt, Lars, and our always pro producer, the one and only Justin Jones. So let's light it up. Got a lot of things to talk about, including kind of post talk about Texas and then leading up to South Florida and the travel down to Tampa, among many other things. I got to get my Braves in here. They could clinch tonight. That's just amazing. It's what the date? It's September 13th. But anyway, Lars, how are you today?
I'm good. A lot of chatter in the college football universe about what is the reason for the demise of the Alabama dynasty. And, you hear that the run of elite quarterbacks was unsustainable. The constant churn of assistants was going to catch up with Nick Saban eventually. Regression to the mean is inevitable for everyone. The clock runs out on every dynasty. But USF coach Alex Golesh this week had a kind of a unique perspective. And he essentially is saying that Saban's been an indirect victim of his own success. One, you just look at the head coaches across the SEC. Florida is led by a former Saban assistant. Georgia is. Mississippi is. Texas A&M. And the Nick Saban, or the Sabanization of the SEC, as some people call it, he has led programs to update their infrastructure and hire a gazillion analysts. But what Golesh is saying, and he was a offensive coordinator at Tennessee for 2 years, and so he has a pretty good view. And this is something I really haven't thought about. And he said, you know what? You see that defensive scheme, meaning Nick Saban's defensive scheme, over and over and over. The playbooks and roster, used to vary by coach and school, so the details would be different, right? Of everybody's scheme was different. But Saban's influence has been so profound that Kirby Smart is running Saban's defense. Billy Napier, when he needed a defensive coordinator, he hired Austin Armstrong, who spent 2019 under Smart. See, in the Saban tree, right, it's just so big, especially on the defensive side, that what the South Florida coach is saying is that everybody now runs the Nick Saban defense, and because of that, you become familiar with it. You're going against it every week. You're practicing against it every week, and therefore you become pretty damn good at going against it. I'm telling you, this what he's saying, it makes a heck of a lot of sense to me, Matt.
It does to me too. And you got Kevin Steele back, so you're not really going to see much of a variance there, are you?
Nope.
They're figuring it out. I also think, and we're very conscious about pointing this out, and I don't know if it supersedes his observations, but I think it is always warranted mentioning again. No one in college football wears a bigger target than the University of Alabama. I mean, It is big, it was bold, it's crimson, it's stamped on them. Was that the biggest game Sark has ever coached in his life?
I mean, he had some big games at Washington, some big games at USC, but no, nothing rivaled that. Nope.
I don't think so either. And
because he did something that no one has done in the Saban era, and that is come into Bryant-Denny and win by double digits.
Well, do y'all think that his wins as a coordinator with Alabama count towards that?
No.
No, I'm just talking about as a head coach. It's a point worth talking about. But just as a head coach, they've had that game circled ever since they lost 20-19. And you may have kind of equal talent, but, man, they guys get jacked up. And so Alabama gets everybody's best shot. And I think that, along with a great game plan, and more than anything else, Quinn Ewers and their ability to kind of take Alabama off the ball in physicality. We don't have to reinvent football here to figure out why Alabama lost on the field. They also contributed to their woes greatly, and we have pointed out those a number of times this week. But I like the article. I like what the South Florida coach is saying. I don't think it's going to I don't know if he knows the defense well enough to move the ball like Texas did. I sincerely doubt it.
I'll say this. Like, okay, so when he's the offensive coordinator at Tennessee in 2021, Tennessee played Saban, Smart, and Kiffin, and they also went against Pitt, who was coached by Pat Narduzzi, who was once a defensive assistant under Saban at Michigan State, right? So that's like almost 4 bites at the apple in 2021. All right, so what happens in 2022? Tennessee, now that Golesh, right, he had 4 chances to see this defense. And I know it's players make plays. It's not the coaches, but the coaches put the players in position. So what happens last year? Tennessee beats Alabama 52-49, snapping a 15-game losing streak. Its offense scores the most points that Alabama has allowed in 115 years. Is that a coincidence? The fact that he had seen a version of the Nick Saban defense 4 times the previous year. I'm just saying, like, I just hadn't thought it. I just hadn't thought of this before, to be honest with you, Matt. And it makes sense to me.
What amazed me, and this goes back to last year against Tennessee, and the point you brought up is well worth discussing, is I was amazed, and the same way I was amazed this past Saturday night at Texas and Tennessee's ability to get receivers. I'm not talking wide open and deep. And you just don't see that with Nick Saban defenses in the past 16 years. And we're seeing it now. And you're suggesting, and South Florida's coach is suggesting that they've seen it enough, now they can work with it or work against it or, profit from their knowledge.
And another theory out there of, what is wrong with Alabama football. Some people are saying that their coaching staff, other than Nick Saban, just isn't good enough. And would you say, and this is for both of you, Justin and Matt, did Alabama get out coached on Saturday night?
A little bit.
Definitely.
Yep.
How many times have we said that in the last, year compared to the last 10 years? And it's not because of Nick Saban. I think it's a function of Nick losing so many assistants,
losing so many positions,
so many high quality guys, and this is like no offense to Tommy Rees, but look at the guy that he replaced, Bill O'Brien, head coach at Penn State, head coach in the NFL, guy who got Brady to multiple Super Bowls. It's a pretty impressive resume for an offensive coordinator. And Tommy Rees, hey, everybody's got to start somewhere, right? But you just can't compare O'Brien's experience to Tommy Rees's experience.
No, you can't. Rees is what, 31?
33, I think.
Yeah, is he? Okay. Here's another thing worth mentioning, and that's Bo Davis. I mean, you want to talk about a D-line coach? Go in the dictionary and look up a fired-up defensive line coach. And I think that had a lot to do with them emotionally and with their schemes because, Bo knew Alabama's offense. And it really, really surprised me that they were able to get pressure on Milroe, and sometimes just rushing 3. Nick Saban mentioned that, and often, rushing 4 and not having a blitz. So also, I think the coaches, assistant coaches, and the constant movement among them under Saban probably does have a little bit to do with it.
And what coach sort of has his hands on the players is with the players more than any other coach. It's your strength and conditioning coach, who was there for a long time, who really was Scotty Cochran. Scotty Cochran.
He's the only strength and conditioning coach I've ever known that had his own endorsement plan.
Hey, Scotty Cochran, I know he's had some personal struggles, like we all have personal struggles. But, man, that guy is an amazing strength and conditioning coach. And to me, he was almost as important as Nick Saban in that program for so many years. And the loss of Cochran, I think, it was more significant than we all saw at the time, or than we all believed it was at the time.
Let's get some thoughts from Jeff Spiegel, ABC 3340, and we'll do that in just a couple of minutes. You listen to the Hump Day edition of Big Noon Sports.
Tide 100.9 Tuscaloosa weather.
A partly sunny sky this afternoon. The chance of a few scattered showers through the evening hours. The high today 90, tonight's low 68. Tomorrow a mixture of clouds and sunshine. Scattered showers are possible during the day. The high at 85. I'm James Spann on the ABC 3340 Weather Center on Tide 100.9. It's 82 degrees in Tuscaloosa.
More Big Noon Sports coming up.
On Big Noon Sports, Matt and Lars, Justin, appreciate you folks dialing us in. And another reminder, you get to football season, we travel around a little bit, that this Friday, Lars and I will be at Innisfree, serving up some cold beer, not personally, but chowing down some burgers. I've done that 2 weeks in a row. They really go out of their way to get a very, very good quality beef because their hamburgers are outstanding. And if you've ever been anywhere in the neighborhood of Innisfree, you know the number of beers, the cold beers. And I'll say this, they also have an outstanding staff. And when we're out there, they are literally at our beck and call, and that's when they all have full tables. So make sure and come see us this Friday afternoon from noon until 2. Big Noon Sports will be live from Innisfree. All right, is Speaks up?
Yes.
Oh, there's Jeff Spiegel. How are you, my man?
I'm really good, Matt. How are you?
Good. I'm just, I'm living kind of a dream at my age. So it's all very, very good. We talked with you last week, and you anchored, and I mean this literally and figuratively, this past Friday, because you didn't go to one of the games, but you pulled in all the information and watched, if you didn't have Spectrum. Don't get me started on that TV thing, Jeff. But
right.
Your observations, and let's start on the West Coast. Why did Auburn's offense suddenly stumble?
Well, week 2, it's just really hard to tell, what to believe or not. I mean, is Auburn's offense really that bad, or is California's defense, solid? But I know this just from the naked eye, and I know just enough about football to be dangerous when I talk about it, right? Peyton Thorne made some obvious bad decisions. I mean, the pick that he made was a high throw that not even the new, 6'4" wide receiver could leap up and catch. And that got picked. And then he had a fumble, when he was trying to make an extra effort and make a play. And Auburn's very fortunate that there was a quick whistle blown on that, and that was not a touchdown, and instead, they held Cal to a field goal. But, 230 yards of offense, that's not going to get it done. I mean, when you start playing SEC games. So there's a lot of concern, about the offense. Now the defense played top notch, I thought. Eugene Asante, he was the only person on that team that was keeping me awake Saturday night, because I just couldn't wait to see what defensive play he was going to make next. He was terrific. In fact, I made a bold prediction on the zone the other night. I'll make a lot of those. Some of them come true, some of them don't. But I think this guy's going to wind up on the Butkus Award list, before the year's out, because he was just incredible. So, of course, there's a lot of football left to be played, but obviously Auburn doesn't have everything figured out offensively. Will they, in time to win, 7, 8 games? I think they can, but certainly the offense was a mess Saturday without question.
All right, let's go to what happened in Tuscaloosa Saturday night before the Auburn game. Let me just ask you point blank, and we may take a while on this. What's wrong with Alabama?
Well, the offensive line was terrible. I mean, they were awful. There were holding calls. There were calls that cost Alabama points. And Seth McLaughlin, the low snaps. The quarterback has an expectation of where he wants the football snapped to him, when the play starts, and it's not, scooting to him on the ground or off to the left. So, Seth's got some mistakes to clean up, and the offensive line has a lot of mistakes to clean up. I don't think you overhaul the roster after you lose to the Texas Longhorns, who I think, could wind up winning the national championship. I don't think you do that. But I think the offensive line is getting a fair share of criticism, and they deserve it. To me, I think Milroe is getting too much criticism. And he made, his share of mistakes, but the offensive line didn't help him any. It's laughable to me when I was talking with someone about this, about the offensive line penalties. And we talked about the Caden Proctor hold, and then we talked about the Darian Dalcourt, ineligible receiver downfield. He was downfield blocking. He was too far down, and that took away an Alabama touchdown. And then, a friend of mine was going, well, you can't blame Dalcourt for that because, he thought Milroe was going to run. Well, then I'll just turn around and say, well, those 2 interceptions that Milroe threw, he thought a guy was open. The mistakes are mistakes, and the mistakes the offensive lineman made cost Alabama 8 points because they had to settle for field goals instead of touchdowns. The mistakes that Milroe made cost Alabama 10 points. That's 18 points. Now, every point is huge in a game like you're playing against Texas. But when you make mistakes that cost you 18 points, those are lethal. And you're never going to be a team of the caliber of Texas by making mistakes like that.
Which Texas, like you said, is pretty good. Quinn Ewers, just tell me what you thought about this guy Saturday night. And you know what? He was showing that brilliance before he got hurt a year ago.
Yeah, we were talking about this on the zone as well, that, all year long you heard, from the Texas fans, well, if our quarterback hadn't gotten hurt, there would have been a big difference in that ball game. Well, what you saw Saturday night was what would have happened in Austin, Texas, had Ewers been healthy to play the whole game. Because I would contend that he got off to a hotter start against Alabama in Austin than he did in Tuscaloosa. This guy is a high quality quarterback, and when you've got a quarterback like that, and you've got playmakers like that, and you've got a guy calling plays on the sidelines who I think is the best in the business right now, then that's a tough opponent. And look, I thought Alabama's defense, I'm not really dogging Alabama's defense that much. I mean, yeah, they let some receivers behind them. but they played well enough to keep Alabama in that football game. It was the offensive line mistakes and the quarterback mistakes that really, in the end, cost Alabama that football game.
Jeff, do you think the fact that Texas knew that they could stand toe-to-toe with Alabama based on last year's game was a factor in them coming in, and they just were not intimidated by the environment or the team that they were going up against?
Yeah, I think they came in pretty confident. I mean, we talked about this, last week about how Texas would come into this game. And, there are certain teams who, they're beat, before they get into Bryant-Denny Stadium because of the Alabama mystique and all of that. Well, that doesn't play against Texas. I mean, the Alabama mystique means nothing to them, because they feel like they've got a mystique, of their own. And certainly they came in with the swagger. They came in with the confidence that, they could beat these guys. And, like I said, had Alabama played a mistake-free game, Alabama wins. Alabama wins that game. But Texas knew if they could force Alabama into making mistakes. And look, one of Jalen Milroe's worst mistakes probably was having a historic debut against Middle Tennessee. When he ran for 3 touchdowns and threw 2 touchdown passes. But what everyone needs to realize, and I'm sure everyone does, I'm not the only one, Middle Tennessee may have some future lawyers, bankers, future business leaders playing on their team. Texas has got a bunch of future NFL stars, playing on their team. So there's a difference. When you see a window that was open against Middle Tennessee, that window closes a little quicker when you throw the football against Texas. So I think Jalen Milroe has learned a valuable lesson here. Now, if he goes out against South Florida and struggles, if Seth McLaughlin can't snap the ball in Tampa, if the offensive line can't keep from holding people, against South Florida, because Bama should win that game by 3 touchdowns, whether they're playing in Tuscaloosa, Tampa, or Timbuktu, then that's when you make a roster overhaul. That's when you come in the following Monday and you go, there's going to be some guys sitting on the bench this next week because we can't deal with this. So they got a game here to kind of clean up their act and execute better. And then I think, you're going to see some changes, but certainly not heading into this football game because of the quality opponent they played last Saturday.
Jeff, a lot of talk out there about reasons behind the slippage in the Alabama program. And I think you can't really contest that argument that there has been some because it's right there in the statistics. Alabama, I believe it's their 19 last games against Power 5 opponents, or I believe they've lost 5. Top 20 opponents lost 5. In the previous 50, they had lost 5. So it appears that the Alabama has sort of come back to earth, and people are speculating, is it because of the quality of coaches, the assistants, that the fact that, so many have left that has finally caught up with Nick Saban? Is it the fact that everybody in the SEC is running Nick Saban's defense? And that is what South Florida's head coach came out and said that, that in 2021, when he's the offensive coordinator at Tennessee, he faced basically 4 Saban-style defenses. And that is what allowed him to figure out how to best exploit it in 2022 when they scored the most points on Alabama since, I think, in 110 years. So what do you think? I know this is a big question, but clearly we have the evidence that it's not quite the same as it was. And you could say it's NIL too, different era. Nick Kelly from the Tuscaloosa News told us that was kind of his operating theory. What do you think? And I know this is a big, wide open question.
Well, I think when it comes to Nick Saban, he's brought everyone's everyone has raised their level of play, to kind of contend, with Nick, because he's been so good at doing it for so long. Let's not forget, Nick Saban saved Steve Sarkisian's career. He saved it. I mean, he brought him in, as an analyst when no one wanted to hire Sark. And he was part of Nick Saban's coaching rehab school, as we like to call it. And he put Sark back on his feet. And so, and then he's staring across the sideline at the monster, that he helped create. So imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. So if people are out there are doing things the way Nick Saban did them, and they see the way he does them, Kirby Smart has done that at Georgia. He runs his program just like Nick Saban, has done at Alabama. Then, of course, you combine that with really good recruiting, you're going to get the level of play that's going to be raised. And I think that's what Nick Saban's dealing with, and I think they have to raise their level of play a little higher as well.
I want to talk to you a little bit more about Nick Saban and some rumors, and I think that's all they are. But because this is a talk show and that's what we address, we're going to do that on the other side of the break. And I'm just assuming, Speaks, that you can hang on.
Sure.
All right. Jeff Spiegel from ABC 3340 is our guest. Let's talk about the future of Nick Saban in Alabama coming up.
Hey, this is Reagan, owner of R&R Cigars, the Cigar Mansion in downtown Tuscaloosa, located at 2703 6th Street across from the Home 2 Suites. Come down to R&R and see why we're the ultimate cigar and bourbon experience. With over 165 bourbons and 5 private barrels, our selection of bourbon is unmatched. We have the best cocktails around and our cigar selection is legendary. Our lounge and service are world class. Come and experience the luxury of the mansion and see why it's a world-renowned cigar and spirits destination.
This is the Big Noon Sports Network.
That it is. Big Noon Sports. Matt Cofer along with Lars Anderson, Justin Jones, and our guest and a regular now on the show from ABC 3340 is Jeff Spiegel. Jeff, the social media pages went crazy yesterday from a group called College Sports Corner. They have a Facebook page. That's all. I don't put a lot of credibility into it, but they said they had been in touch with family members that had indicated that Nick Saban had already started telling his close friends that he was retiring at the end of the year. Do you even care to address that?
No, I'm not buying it. I mean, I'm just not. I mean, the overreaction, that comes after losses, and we've dealt with this, for a long time, with Nick Saban. I mean, I can't point to particular games, but I remember after the kick 6, we heard a lot of talk about this. Well, he's leaving, he's going to Texas, or, you've heard all kind of things. Well, this is going to be it for him. To me, the way I look at it is this, he wants to stay on, and he said this, as long as he can contribute in a positive way to the program. All because they get beat by Texas by 10 points, by a team who's now ranked 4th in the country, all because they lose to them at home, does not mean he isn't contributing in a positive way to this program. So I think that's the only reason why he would step down. Now, if this thing falls apart, this year, then he may step down, or he may go, you know what? I don't want to go out that way. I tend to lean toward that line of thinking, that he's going to go out as on top as he can go out. And so, no, I'm not buying anything on social media that talks about, this is it for Nick Saban. This is the final year. I'm just not buying it until he steps up to, a podium, and says, I'm resigning as the coach at the University of Alabama. That's when I'll believe it.
I think a lot of people are just putting together the fact, he just buys this huge place in Florida, And then his post-game press conference, Jeff, where he was saying, what an honor and a privilege it is to be at Alabama. It almost sounded like a farewell speech. Did you get that?
I think he was messing with us.
No. I look at it now. Would he have said that? Would he have said that 14 years ago? No, probably not. But I don't think there's any question that he's mellowed to a degree, that he's able to stop and appreciate, simpler things more, than he used to. So there's no doubt in my mind that there was a point of either before the game, during the game, or whatever, where he may have allowed himself to look up at the stands and go, wow, this is really cool. But he thought about that for a millisecond, before he got back to coaching. I think he appreciates the fact where he is, what he's done, and what games like that mean to the fan base, and what it means to Tuscaloosa, and what they mean to college football. I mean, so there were some folks who looked at that and go, wow, that just sounded so unlike Nick. I'm trying to, tap the brakes here and say, don't read too much into stuff. I mean, there's too much over analysis going on here, I think.
And let's keep in mind now, recruiting. That has a lot to do with people spreading these rumors. Trust me, it's happened in the past and it'll happen in the future. By the way, one of the true media confidants with Nick Saban is Chris Lowe. Chris Lowe says no. So, I almost say end of discussion. All right, let's just do an if, okay? Which is the better job right now, Jeff? Texas with all their NIL money or Alabama with all their history?
I'm going to say it's a push. And again, you're asking me this question for the sole reason because Texas beat Alabama Saturday. Texas, because of that win against Alabama Saturday, has become all of a sudden the new flavor of the month. Ryan Williams, the Alabama commit from Maryland, the receiver who's just fantastic, just a, quote unquote generational player. We've all heard that phrase thrown around a lot, but he's really, really good. He's talking about visiting Texas. Now, you talk about people pushing the panic button. If he flips to Texas, there are going to be some people pushing the panic button when that happens, because then you're talking about a recruiting class being affected. And then you're talking about, the foundation kind of crumbling a little bit, because the lifeblood of all programs is recruiting. So keep an eye on that. I don't know if that's going to happen, but the fact that he's even talking about visiting Texas, has certainly gotten Alabama fans a tad nervous.
All right. Let's break away from football for just a second. How about them Atlanta Braves there, Speaks?
Yeah. Yeah, man, they're crushing the ball.
They have 2 games and they win the division. Their magic number is 2. This is just amazing.
It's crazy. And Olson's just killing the ball. He's got, 50 home runs, and it's unbelievable what he's done.
He's got 51.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 51 now. So, it's one of those things. Like if you're a Braves fan, and I've been a Braves fan ever since the Hammer and Hank days, you kind of hold your breath. It's kind of like, whoa, this is too good. This is like too good to be true. This is too good to be happening. There's a guy I work with who's the most pessimistic sports fan I know. He loves his Braves, but he's got this idea that the wheels are going to come off, like in the playoffs. I'm going, come on, man, enjoy this. let's get to the playoffs and we'll get to the playoffs, but just enjoy this ride right now. But he can't. He just can't do it because he just knows that something bad is going to happen in the playoffs. But this team is just really riding an incredible wave of momentum and confidence, and they're just playing incredibly well right now.
Jeff, your thoughts on the devastating injury suffered by Aaron Rodgers on what was looking like a really special Monday night at MetLife Stadium?
Well, I was one of those watching it on TV. I had it on here in the sports office while I was putting the 10 o'clock show together. And I saw the pregame fanfare, and the Jets fans were just coming unglued. And then when he went out on the fourth play of the game, it's like all the air was sucked out of that building. It is miraculous to me. I saw them interview Peyton Manning at halftime of the game, and Peyton just pretty much just wrote the Jets off at that point. I mean, full credit to those guys, for hanging in there, and Zach Wilson, and the defense for making Josh Allen, who's a pretty good when it comes to protecting the football, forcing him into 4 turnovers. Long term for the Jets, it doesn't look good, but I think it's amazing that they overcame that adversity Monday night and still beat the Bills. A big win for them, but a devastating injury, for the Jets. And one that, you're talking about a torn Achilles and a guy who's 39 years old. I mean, we may have seen the last of Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, and going to the backup for the Jets, Wilson. I mean, Peyton Manning was basically annoyed watching him. I mean, he was like angry watching him and just the mistakes he was making. And I hope he can turn it around. He seems like a good kid, but the Jets are so talented. But yeah, what does your gut tell you about whether or not Aaron Rodgers does come back? I personally have suffered a torn Achilles, and I'm still not back to where I was. And it seems to hit some of us in that middle age range.
Yeah, I don't think he comes back. Dan Marino came back from it and played 6 years, but he injured his when he was 32. And 32 and 39. I mean, you're talking about 7 years, and I just don't see him. I don't see him coming back. Man, what a catch though that the 17 made on that another Wilson, and then the punt return was one of the most incredible plays like I've ever seen. In football, it was crazy, but it was really such a compelling game to watch, but heartbreaking nonetheless because of what happened to Aaron Rodgers.
Great stuff as always, Speeds. Hey, line up your Friday night and tell us more about the Zone.
Yeah, well, we've got Friday Night Rivals Blitz game day at 6:30 on My 68. Then at 7 o'clock, we got a great game on My 68, Hoover at Vestavia Hills. I mean, it's just one of the most intense rivalries in the state. And then Sunday nights, 10:35 on ABC 3340, The Zone. And always a lot of fun, always a lot to talk about. And appreciate you giving me the opportunity to plug those programs. And I hope you guys have a great day.
Thank you, Jeff. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, really. That's the least we can do. Thanks, Jeff. We'll talk next week. Have a great week.
Thank you.
All right. You bet. Lars, we need to roll into our break, but I'm sure you've seen this. I heard about it on talk radio from the nationals to the locals yesterday about the bar tabs. Let's put it this way. When Rodgers went down, there was a certain segment of Jets fans that actually cheered. Crazy. But that's a great story, and we'll get to that on the other side of the break as we are in the first half of Big Noon Sports.
Weekday mornings at 6 a.m. The Martin Houston Show.
Join us on tomorrow as we continue the conversation about Alabama football as they try to right the ship against USF. We'll continue to break down a couple of things they need to work on to get better against USF. And we'll also have Max Recruiting joining the conversation right here on your home for Alabama sports.
Catch the Martin Houston Show from 6 to 7 weekday mornings on Tide 100.9.
Laura Lee Thompson is known as the Bama Broker. She's a Tuscaloosa native, an Alabama graduate, and the only realtor in town with Wall Street experience. A skilled negotiator, Laura Lee knows how to buy low and sell high. And the Bama Broker isn't just going to show you houses. No, Laura Lee is going to educate you on the market, guide you to homes that fit your budget, and teach you how to sell your home for its maximum profit. Throughout the entire process, the Bama Broker will equip you with the tools you need to both buy a home and build financial wealth through home ownership. Trust me, the Bama Broker, who's as roll tide as houndstooth, will get you across the goal line. That's Laura Lee Thompson, the Bama Broker with Advantage Realty Group. You can reach her at 205-790-7229. Again, that's 205-790-7229. And you can also email her at lauralee@thebamabroker.com. That's Laura Lee @thebamabroker.com.
Tide 100.9 Tuscaloosa weather.
A partly sunny sky this afternoon. The chance of a few scattered showers through the evening hours. The high today 90, tonight's low 68. Tomorrow a mixture of clouds and sunshine. Scattered showers are possible during the day. The high at 85. I'm James Spann on the ABC 3340 Weather Center on Tide 100.9. It's 83 degrees in Tuscaloosa.
Covering SEC sports like kudzu on the roadside. This is Big Noon Sports.
And we have Mike Rodak, AL.com, and he is among the many fine beat writers. He does an excellent job. So he's going to join at 1 o'clock, and there's some inside scoop. He's liable to lay it on the line. But I found this of great interest, and I got my cities mixed up here. So it wasn't Jets fans cheering Rodgers so they could get a free bar tab. It was Packer fans. A bar in Green Bay. Lars, follow along with me. Let me see if I can just get the boundaries on this. But a bar was offering free tabs for every game that Rodgers started and lost. And guess what happens? 4 plays in, he's out for the season. So there's where the real cheers were, because everybody at the bar started drinking like crazy because they're saying, we got a free tab.
Free tab. I mean, think of that. It's free booze for 3+ hours.
In Wisconsin.
In Wisconsin. And it's like, it is virtually guaranteed that it's all free. And so what happens? Everybody just starts drinking like it's the last day on earth, right? And, oh man.
And they ended up having to pay. What a great promotion that night for the bar. But is it my understanding, did you read further down in the article that they're going to continue to do this the rest of the year? But how can they if part of the rules is that he has to start?
Yeah, I haven't seen that, but yeah, I can't imagine. There's no point of keeping the sort of gimmick going because he's not playing again for the rest of the year. He may never play again. I actually think he will come back. I think he will. I think he'll come back. It's going to be very difficult, but I don't think he wants to end his legendary career like that. And he did make a commitment to the Jets for 2 years, and he was firm in that he's going to play for 2 more years. But man, this is going to be a grueling rehab. And it'll be interesting to see, Aaron talked so eloquently and with a smile on his face about the one of the best relationships he has formed since he got to New York was with Zach Wilson, right? The former number 2 overall pick who has really struggled in his first 2 seasons in the NFL. And he struggled again on Monday night after he came in. So does Aaron Rodgers choose to rehab in New York right? And then on Sundays, he can almost be, well, he would be basically an assistant coach and trying to get Zach ready to play. I think that will be an indication of whether or not Aaron's going to come back or not, of where he rehabs. Because, again, he has gone out of his way time and time again to talk about how rewarding it has been to be a mentor to Zach Wilson. And so, which is something he would never, remember, he gave Jordan Love the cold shoulder in Green Bay, right? Kind of the same way.
He's pretty good.
Yeah, Jordan Love is pretty good. He's pretty good. I think Green Bay.
Very, very happy about that.
Gutekunst, the GM, they knew exactly what they were doing in Green Bay. They know exactly what they're doing.
Well, and this has been their MO. I mean,
yeah.
they've always brought in somebody they really thought highly of, and they let him, kind of tutor under the current quarterback. They did that with Rodgers, although Rodgers was not very helpful. They did it with Favre with Rodgers, right? So
I don't think Favre was very helpful to Aaron either.
Well, there are times I don't think Favre was very helpful to anybody except himself. I still like the guy, although there's a lot of things hanging around him that are very, very questionable. But, all right, yeah. Lars, here's the deal. And keep in mind, I was on the road very late at night, so I was scanning, and I was picking up all kinds of sports shows. But one said the Jets need to pay for Tom Brady. You heard that one?
Yeah, that is not happening. I believe it was either Brady or the Jets said it's not happening. And look, Tom has lost a lot of weight. I don't know if you've seen him. I was around him a lot. He's lost a lot of weight. He's in nowhere near football shape, and he's somebody who needs a lot of reps. And this just doesn't fit Tom Brady at all.
He's 46.
Yeah, no, they are going to bring in a veteran. A guy who makes a lot of sense to me is Case Keenum, who plays for Houston. He's currently the third stringer, and Case Keenum, he's not going to win an MVP or anything, but just a couple of years ago, he got paid pretty well. And you want a guy with veteran experience who, if Zach Wilson continues to struggle, and you look at the Jets' upcoming schedule, and it's really difficult next 4 games, but if he continues to struggle, you give this veteran like 3-4 weeks, and then you bring him in. I've heard the name, Carson Wentz.
I heard somebody mention Trey Lance, but wouldn't that send a signal to Rodgers that?
Trey Lance is, he's with the Cowboys. I don't think the Cowboys have any intention of getting rid of Trey Lance.
No, Jerry Jones said no.
Yeah. So it's not going to be Brady. I have a friend, and I shouldn't say who it is, but he's a good buddy of mine. He's a writer in New York, and he just signed this really big book deal to do a season, like a Aaron Rodgers in New York first season book.
Oh, wow.
And I know he already signed the contract, and the advance was substantial. It was mid 6 figures.
That's going to be the shortest book ever.
Yeah, they're going to have to pivot and do something a little bit different, but yeah, we'll see what happens with that. But I just feel so bad for Aaron Rodgers, and the Jets fans feel that they're cursed, and still the greatest moment in Jets history is our Alabama guy, Joe Namath, running off the field, waving that number 1.
He still can't buy a drink or dinner anywhere in Manhattan.
Well, he doesn't drink anymore, but he couldn't buy one in Alabama either. I'm assuming.
No. I thought he did a very interesting job on game day. Of course, he was a part of a very controversial play versus Texas back in the 60s, where everybody thought he scored, when in fact he admits now he probably didn't. which is quite interesting. So, and he also, wasn't he the one that picked a big upset like Washington State over somebody? Anyway, we can mill around that. And coming up top of the hour, we'll talk some more Alabama football with AL.com's Mike Rodak. You're listening to Big Noon Sports.
WTUG HD2 Northport and W265CG Tuscaloosa. Tide 100.9 and streaming on the Tide 100.9 app.
The best sports talk in Alabama. This is Big Noon Sports.
We go into the second half here on Big Noon Sports. Don't forget that we have a website. It's bignoonsports.com, but also our very, very close relationship with Tide 100.9, our flagship station in Tuscaloosa. You can also dial them up, and I urge you to extend that search and go into what's called the Tuscaloosa Thread. They have a lot of interesting stories online as well. Let's welcome in our second hour guest. He's no stranger to this show, and that's Mike Rodak from AL.com. Mike, all week long, we've been talking about what's wrong with Alabama, what's wrong with Alabama, what's wrong with Alabama. I want you to tell me what's right and kind of look into your crystal ball for what Alabama has in front of it.
Well, I'd say one of the things that's right that's almost surprised me a little bit has been the deep passing game and the ability to create some explosive plays through the air, which I think, go back to the summer, was probably one of the biggest questions about this team. One of the things I was least expecting to see out of this offense, and that really hasn't been the problem. I mean, they actually had more explosive passing plays than Texas did. 5 over 15 yards compared to 4 over 15 yards for Texas. And, it's a very hit or miss sort of offense right now where, Jalen Milroe has been able to hit some guys down the field, even a couple, touchdowns taken off the board. And a lot of the other stuff is not necessarily working quite as well. I mean, the running game, which we expected to be the stronger part of the offense, hasn't. And that's been, outside of the first 3 carries in the game. I think there was 29 yards in the first 3 running back carries against Texas, and they averaged 2 yards after that. So it's flipped from where the expectations were. But, there is something to build on with, Jermaine Burton in particular, and maybe Isaiah Bond and Amari Niblack, and there's something there more than I thought. But in terms of the outlook, I mean, it's a situation here where this is the reality of the 4-team playoff. And this is obviously the last year of it, but you lose 2 games and you're almost certainly out. You can't 100% say you're out, but history has shown there's never been a 2-loss team make the playoffs. Even last year when Alabama had 2 close losses on the road and was seen still to be a good team. Everything kind of fell their way at the end of the season with some of the conference championship games and all that, and they still didn't make the playoffs. So, you put a situation here where one of your losses, hypothetically, is, a 10-point home loss to Texas, and then you have another loss somewhere else. And I'm not sure a 2-loss Alabama team's making it this year either. So they're in a spot where, they really need to win every game. All 8 SEC games, and then go to Atlanta and win the SEC championship if you want to make the playoff. Otherwise, it's going to be, you lose another game here, and it's just kind of playing out the string, which is a very, very strange spot for this team to be in, and really somewhere it hasn't been in. And I mean, 2010 was probably the closest comparison, but even before then, I'd say pre-Saban. If that particular outcome happens, if let's say they lose a game in October, then the rest of the season, as far as a national championship, is done.
Mike, are there unfair expectations that have been placed on Jalen Milroe? So let's face it, following Bryce Young, you could be Quinn Ewers and you probably get picked apart. But do you understand my questions? I think sometimes, no, he didn't play great against Texas, but, he had some bright spots. So are we expecting too much from him?
I mean, his numbers are very comparable to Bryce Young's through 2 games of last season. with the exception of the interceptions. And those 2 interceptions were killer against Texas. I mean, that resulted in 10 points. The first was a field goal. The second was a touchdown. And obviously that was the difference in the game. And, you know, you can argue the penalties, too, that took touchdowns off the board. But, you know, he was never going to be Bryce Young. I think everybody knew that. I don't know if there was an expectation necessarily for him to be that. I think the opener probably, you know, buoyed some of the hope for him. You know, fans saw the big long touchdown passes to Bond and Niblack and Burton in that game. And, you know, there was sort of we're going to rally around this guy. There was no questions. There's no doubt going into the Texas game on who the starting quarterback was, which I think a month ago, I think we were expecting there to be. And, you know, that there's just this sense like, all right, you know, maybe this would work. And again, yeah, you're right. I mean, I don't know if he was the number one problem against Texas. I think there's a lot of other things. I think you can point to the offensive line, the running game, the defense, secondary. There's a lot of things. And he did some things well. The 2 interceptions were the big problems for him. And I'm sure we'll get into it. But, you know, where does that leave him? I think it's in a spot where he's still, you know, potentially the starter, but there's less optimism that, you know, there's going to be a long-term solution with him in the sense that he can play and be the guy, you know, late into this season or into next season.
South Florida head football coach Alex Golesh issued a statement, it's a news conference, whatever the case may be, and he said, you know, I think some of y'all are not getting a clear message here on how many assistant coaches, now head coaches, that know Alabama's defense have kind of figured it out. And he was the OC at Texas, at Tennessee, not last year when Tennessee won, but he was indicating that he thought that because there were so many coaches in the SEC and slash Texas that were familiar with Alabama's defense, that somehow it's becoming easier to move the football on.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably some truth to that. I mean, it's changed, though, so it's not, you know, what the defense was when Kirby Smart was here is not the same as it is now, and it's, you know, does that help Kirby Smart, or is it just Georgia's a good football team, or is just Texas a good football team and Steve Sarkisian put his guys in the right spot, versus did he know exactly what Alabama was doing? You know, it's always a combination of factors. I certainly think it helps other coaches that they've been up close and personal with that defense and with Saban, and they kind of know what he's thinking. But I think, you know, people also have a lot of faith and trust in Nick Saban that he's going to continue to adapt and stay a step ahead. And he's also been up close and personal with Sark and the other coaches that have gone against him and know what they think. And so it goes both ways. And, yeah, you know, I don't know if that's the driving factor, you know, to why there's been more success. You know, LSU put 32 points in Alabama last year, and that's not a coaching staff that really, you know, has, you know, ties to Nick Saban. And it was just, you know, Brian Kelly coached Notre Dame, did not have as much success with less talent, and he had more success with more talent. So I think talent's certainly a part of it, and there's, quite frankly, better talent right now at other schools at quarterback and wide receiver than there is at Alabama. You know, Alabama's wide receivers are not as good as Texas's. Same thing at quarterback. And that's, I think, a bigger, you know, part of the formula is that for a variety of reasons, NIL and the portal and all that, there's better players elsewhere than there was 10 years ago. And those players are the players on the field who are going to make the plays, and that's what happened on Saturday.
Mike, did you see a Bo Davis influence in the way Texas's D-line played and emotionally?
You know, so I never covered Bo. He was before my time at Alabama, so I can't say I knew what to look for there. But, you know, it seems like from a football standpoint, he was well regarded when he was here. And obviously those were better Alabama defensive lines than I think they have now. I think there's less disruptive players that they have on their defensive line here, and Texas has disruptive players, and Sweat and some of those guys that, everybody knew about going into the game. That everybody was kind of saying that was probably going to be the best defensive line they played all year, and I think they lived up to it. How much Bo Davis has influence on that, I'm not sure, versus, Freddie Roach and what he's doing at Alabama's defensive line. Again, I think talent's still probably the driving factor there. And if you put Sweat on Alabama's defensive line, I think they have more than 0 pressures and 0 sacks in this game.
Mike, tell us how people can follow you and maybe what you're working on these days, and we'll take a break and come back and talk some more.
Yeah, on Bama247.com and on Twitter at Mike Rodak.
I just said AL.com a minute ago. My apologies, Mike. Old man memory catches up with me. You are with Bama 24/7. Please correct me next time. But let's hope, Mike, there won't be a next time. Hey, I got to ask you about the running back room. Big question for you. Coming up on Big Noon Sports.
Reagan, owner of R&R Cigars, the Cigar Mansion in downtown Tuscaloosa, located at 2703 6th Street across from the Home 2 Suites. Come down to R&R and see why we're the ultimate cigar and bourbon experience. With over 165 bourbons and 5 private barrels, our selection of bourbon is unmatched. We have the best cocktails around, and our cigar selection is legendary. Our lounge and service are world class. Come and experience the luxury of the mansion and see why it's a world-renowned cigar and spirits destination.
Tide 100.9 Tuscaloosa weather.
A partly sunny sky this afternoon. The chance of a few scattered showers through the evening hours. The high today 90. Tonight's low 68. Tomorrow a mixture of clouds and sunshine. Scattered showers if possible during the day. The high at 85. I'm James Spann on the ABC 3340 Weather Center on Tide 100.9. It's 83 degrees in Tuscaloosa.
From T-Town to the Plains, this is Alabama's most in-depth analysis on the SEC. This is Big Noon Sports.
And our guest on Bama 24/7 is Mike Rodak. Mike, I've looked and never heard the question asked to Nick Saban or anyone else, but Justice Haynes was absent. Is he injured? Do you have any idea why he did not play against Texas?
No, he was healthy. He's been back to practice. He was hurt. I think it was the second scrimmage, which would have been like the third weekend in August. But he came back after that and just didn't play, which I think is a good question because it was glaring how ineffective that group of running backs was against Texas. And I think we've reached a point where, I don't want to pick on Roydell Williams, but I think he's probably the least explosive of that group. And, it's been 4 years now at Alabama. I just don't know. I think they can rely upon him to do the right thing, to, be good at blitz pickup, to be in the right spot, to contribute on special teams. But I don't know if he needs the carries that he's getting, and if it would be better to give those to Justice Haynes or Richard Young. I mean, you have 2 5-star running backs that didn't really play on offense against Texas. And, Demarion Miller, too, is a guy who, by all accounts, had a really good fall camp, a couple good scrimmages, and, didn't too much with the couple of carries that he had. But I do think there's probably a conversation worth having about shaking that order up. And, I think Saban really likes Jason McClellan. I think he's certainly done some pretty good things over the last couple of years, but the ceiling for him is not as high as Justice Haynes is. And look, if the identity of this offense, the goal of this offense is still to try to run the ball, be physical, be a little bit more controlled at quarterback, then everybody's going to point to 2015. It's the season where they did that really well and even lost the game early. But they had Derrick Henry that year, and they don't have Derrick Henry on this roster, but the next best thing they probably have is Justice Haynes above Jason McClellan. So, I think that it's worth, especially in a game like this against South Florida, like why not get some of those younger guys on the field at running back and, try to get them going and kind of see where it leads you.
Usually, it's been my experience when a guy that young and obviously very talented doesn't get into games, it's because he's not doing the other things. You give him the ball, he's great, but he might also get your quarterback killed. I remember 30 years ago, and Gene Stallings gave that explanation after Sean Alexander ran for 271 yards against LSU. Sometimes those guys just don't pick up the offense, right?
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of optimism around Haynes and what he did in the spring and the fall. And he had a great opener, too. I mean, he was on the field for Middle Tennessee State and I think he was averaging like 6 or 7 yards a carry when he was in there. And there was issues with blitz pickup against Middle Tennessee. Jam Miller is the play that comes to mind. Yeah. But in a game like that, too, I think, a tight game, important non-conference game, they're probably going to lean on the older guys more than anything else. Granted, they had a freshman left tackle in there and a freshman safety, and that didn't really work out too well. But it's a question worth asking to Nick Saban tonight or at another point here about Justice Haynes and kind of where things stand.
What do you know about South Florida? I mean, I know they're 1-1. They beat Florida A&M, which is are they even an FCS school? I don't know. But lost to Western Kentucky. I don't know much more than they'll play at Raymond James, and they're the Bulls. I do know this. They can put points on the board.
Yeah, I think, there's probably more optimism down there with Alex Golesh coming in, who was Tennessee's offensive coordinator last year, as you mentioned. And, obviously they're not dealing with Tennessee-type talent right now, but can he somehow scheme USF into a few big plays and make things interesting Saturday? I don't know. I mean, they've been one of the worst teams in FBS the last couple of years. They're on a 17-game losing streak against FBS teams. Like you mentioned, they beat Florida A&M last weekend. That's FCS. That had ended, I think, 15 or 20-game losing streak, whatever it was, against this opponents in general. 15, I think. But now they still have that FBS losing streak that they're dealing with. So it's a team that's fallen off quite a bit from where they were when they scheduled this game, which was 2019 when they announced this. It's a 2-for-1. So, they go down to Florida. They play in an NFL stadium. It's a recruiting hotbed down there. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of Alabama fans at this game. It's not going to be an intimidating road crowd by any means. It's not like going to Penn State, in 2011. And, they get 2 home games back to help fill their schedule. And, there's an exchange of money. And that was coming off of a pretty good season, for USF at the time. It was Charlie Strong was their coach. And I think they had just gone to a bowl game and won it. Really ever since then, they've gone downhill with Jeff Scott, and he got fired. And, now Alex Golesh coming over from Tennessee.
Let's talk about Nick Saban. There's a lot of people, jumping overboard on this stuff. Sometimes I don't even think it's worth addressing due to the sources in which these reports come from. But I guess people put that loss, Saban's end of the news conference comments about what a privilege it's been to coach at Alabama, and then then there's the home down in actually that somewhere around Tampa, $17.8 million. Do you see him retiring anytime soon?
I mean, I think those are all separate things. I don't, people tying them all together, I don't think is, it's not necessarily there. Granted, he's buying a retirement home to retire in it one day. Like, I think that's pretty clear. And obviously with every passing year, we get closer to that retirement. And I think I said over the summer on a different show, like, 2.5 more years was kind of my over-under on it going into this season. I don't think anything's really changed in my mind, based on anything he said or anything that's happened so far this year. I think, it's within the next 2 to 4 years is kind of where I expect this to end. But, in terms of the comment after the game, it was not the first time he even mentioned that last week. I mean, it was kind of a point that he wanted to address, not only with his players, but kind of with the fans that, they understand, like, you pay a lot of money, you come to this game, there's a lot of hype around it, there's a lot of expectations, and fans come and they watch a team lose. And they watch a team lose, Texas running up the clock on them, running for a first down on 3rd and 7, having an offsides penalty on 4th down, and just kind of a crushing way. And I think that was a message when he kind of stepped back to the microphone at the end of his press conference to kind of say, like, thank you for coming, and, we take this seriously, and we view it as a privilege. We're not taking it for granted. and they'll try to do better, I think is kind of what it was. I think it was a message trying to thank the fans. I think it was also a message to all the recruits who are right in the room right next to him there that are listening to that press conference, and that he's not just taking the whole thing for granted. I don't think it was, I'm nostalgically or I'm getting, emotional about this big game because I know it's going to be one of my last. Like, I don't think that's what I took from that at all.
Me either. I think people have added 3 things up and gotten 10. So we'll see how that worked out. But speaking of the atmosphere, can you rank it? Is it electric, as everybody that was there I've talked to said?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get to, kind of walk around too much. And I think part of the difference, at the last really big home game like this, I mean, in terms of rankings, was the Georgia game in 2020, but that was a COVID game. It was half full, 20% full. It was really the 2019 LSU game. The big difference for us was that the 2019 LSU game, it was an outdoor press box. And so we kind of hear everything. We were kind of more in the middle of it. Now, with Alabama's press box being moved a couple of years ago, we're indoors and, you're not as in tune with the crowd noise. So it's a little bit hard to compare in my mind, but I think it was good. I think it was, it's in terms of like press box or in terms of environments that I've been in, I don't know if it's number one. In the couple of years I've covered college football, I think the Florida game 2 years ago was probably number one. I mean, that was the loudest I've ever heard a stadium. But it's still a great environment. There's still big games like this, and there's still going to be a few. I mean, in Tennessee and LSU games, I think are going to have similar sort of feelings to them, especially given Alabama's back's against the wall and they can't be losing another game here.
You're traveling down to Tampa, I would assume?
I am on Friday.
All right. Well, have a safe trip. Enjoy Raymond James Stadium. You ever been there?
I have once, 10 years ago. I covered a Bills-Bucks game. It was E.J. Manuel, the former Florida State quarterback who was a rookie for the Bills, and he threw 4 interceptions. So I remember that vividly. It's kind of a cool place. There's a big pirate ship in the end zone. I guess it's still there. Yeah, they have the cannons that they fire off during Bucks games.
But it's hot, man. Tampa is hot. If you're inland a bit and there's no breeze, it's 100 degrees and 100% humidity, and it can make for a long day. But they have an air-conditioned press box, so all is good. Again, okay, tell everybody where you are. I know that. Bama 24/7 and what y'all got on the page today.
Yeah, Bama 24/7. And we have everything from Nick Saban's SEC conference call this morning when he was talking about the quarterbacks and, the ongoing competition there, which I thought was interesting. And also, I took a question about whether he listens to people talking about the dynasty being over. So you can read about that as well.
How about the Bills? Yeah. It's a tough Monday Night Football game for Buffalo.
No doubt.
Hey, thanks for your time. Let's check in again next week.
You got it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Mike Rodak from Bama 24/7, our guest. When we come back, let's just open up and tear these phone lines apart. 205-342-9904. React to anything we've talked about or anything you've thought about. Again, it's 205-342-9904.
Built to win. Ball game. Alabama wins. Built for championship. Heading for the pylon. Get the race. Wins the race. Touchdown, Alabama. Built by Bama. Join us Saturday as the Crimson Tide head to Tampa to take on South Florida. Our coverage begins at 11:30 on your home for Alabama football. Brought to you by Birmingham Racecourse. BirminghamRacecourse.com. You can be a winner too.
Town to the Plains. This is Alabama's most in-depth analysis on the SEC. This is Big Noon Sports.
Indeed. Thanks to Mike Rodak and to Jeff Spiegel, our guests today. I think we got Timmy B coming up tomorrow, right, Lars?
That's right. 1:15 tomorrow. Tim Brando. He's got a lot to get off his chest, and we're going to allow him to do that.
We usually do. A good read, a recommended read from the broadcaster and not the writer, Lars Anderson. But I was just, doing show prep as we both do. And I ran across a story from Alex Scarborough, who you know, ESPN writer. And it's about Joe Milton. And it goes from chasing rabbits to an alligator. And then it goes to how far he can throw a football. And then there's video. And it's got millions of clicks about how far can Joe Milton throw an orange. Obviously, he's throwing an orange for Tennessee Orange. But he airmails the orange from about the 5 to all the way out of the back of the opposite end zone, and it smashes up against the wall. Now,
wow.
Does that equate to throwing a football that far? No, I don't think so. But I have heard in several reports that one of Milton's faults, believe it or not, is that particularly on over-the-middle patterns, it's hard to catch. I mean, this guy's throwing a Nolan Ryan ball at you.
He can throw a football, 80 yards?
I would think at least that. But that also made me start thinking about guys that you've read about and maybe even seen that could really, really throw it. Do you remember Dan Pastorini?
Yeah. Houston Oilers.
Yep.
Number 7.
Man, he could throw it. Do you remember, and this is, not many people remember this. I do. Do you remember what he did after he played football?
I do not.
He got into NHRA. He was a drag racer. There's a fun fact to know and tell. But I just think and the story is a good read and a dive into the man, Joe Milton. So we'll see him later this year in Tuscaloosa. But, man, and he's 6'5", 250?
Yeah,
this is a large
dude.
Man.
Yeah, he's a big dude.
But anyway.
Years and years ago when Scott Frost was a senior at Nebraska, he was going into his senior year. And I went out to Lincoln and did a story on Scott. We went out onto the Memorial Stadium field, and I always like to get athletes, players, coaches, whatever. Just like I don't want to do the interview in a stale conference room. Like I want to get them out, like walk across campus or whatever, because it just makes them feel more relaxed, or have them give me a tour of the town, or just anything. But Scott was like, "Hey, let's go have a game of catch." I'm like, "All right." And so he's standing at the goal line, and at first I start at the 20-yard line. And number one, he's throwing the ball so hard, it's really hard, it's hard to catch.
It kind of rips through your skin when you're because of the rotation.
Yes. And then, after about 5 minutes of this, he was like, "All right, let's let it rip. Let's let it rip." And so I go to the 30, the 40, the 50, and he's like, "Keep going." I'm at the 40. He said, "Keep going." So I'm at the 30, and I'm 70 yards away. And Scott, right from the goal line, he just, it's like he does 1, 2, and then boom, he releases it. Travels 73 yards, so I have to back up to the 27-yard line, and I'm just thinking, if I don't catch this pass, like I will never hear the end of it. But no, he hit me right in the numbers, and
wow.
It hurts so bad. But yeah, he threw it 73 yards with not much of a warm up, and I'd never seen anything like that before. his mom, I think, or maybe it was his dad, or no, Scott was like a state shot put champion or something. Really strong arm. But have you ever played catch with a professional quarterback?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there have been times like Jay and I, we'd play catch. And even now, like Jay, if he wants to, he can put some mustard on the ball.
Right. I don't think people, well, Alabama fans particularly, they would understand. But, your average walking around fan has no idea. I've been around some that when they release it, it starts whistling.
You hear it before you can. Yeah, you hear it. You literally hear it.
And, the greater the spiral, the greater the velocity, and the greater the chances of dropping it are.
When you were
a novice.
When you were gallivanting across the globe with the snake, Kenny Stabler, did you guys ever get a ball out and throw it around?
Not much like getting on a practice field. But yeah, we'd toss it around sometimes in pregame. But he'd just kind of lollipop it to me, and I'd catch it. And of course, I played very, very little when I was younger, and I can throw it okay, but not like these guys. And we've gone into this. I think it'll be the third time of how difficult it is to field a punt. When it gets to its peak and it does what's called turnover, it starts coming down like, I don't know, something that comes, it's coming down like a rock. And at 110 feet per second. It's just ridiculous. And you almost have to get your chest involved, because if you try and catch that thing with all hands, you know what's going to happen? It's going to rip the first 7 layers of your skin off and drop onto the turf.
I was just going to say the same thing. It's painful. Hurts. You do it once, and you're just like, okay, I don't want to do this anymore.
We were traveling with very, very limited staff, and so I'd get out there in practices and do what anything I could to help Chan and his staff out. But one day I got on a separate field, and wish I could remember the punter's name. He was all USFL, but man, I did it willingly but painfully. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yes.
But getting back to quarterbacks, I do remember one, and his name was Willie Satellite, for good reason. I say Totten, some say Totten. And
Willie Totten.
Yeah.
You
remember him?
Oh, man. He could spin it, yeah.
And he was Jerry Rice's quarterback.
He's Jerry Rice's quarterback at Mississippi Valley State. That's right.
But I always thought that was what an arm he had, and how cool a nickname he had.
Who do you think of all? Let's just stick with the NFL. Who do you think has this quarterbacks that have had really strong arms? I think I start with Doug Williams.
I would go with John Elway.
Oh, yeah, Elway. Yeah, Elway's number one.
And I brought up Chan Gailey, and before he came to Birmingham to coach the Fire, he was the OC for Dan Reeves, Denver. And we would talk about it, and Matt, you just really can't understand what kind of arm he has when he can roll to his left and throw a 15-yard out. And he's throwing the width of the football field, 50 yards. He said on a dart. He said it's amazing, and he'd never seen anything like that in his life. So there's one.
Didn't his receivers... Didn't Elway's receivers complain because he'd throw the ball so hard, and it just they would ask him to throttle it down a little bit in practice because it just everybody's getting jammed fingers and just bruises on their arms.
Why they were wearing gloves?
Yeah.
Keep their epidermis intact. Matthew Stafford has a great arm.
Yeah.
But
Boomer Esiason
don't always.
Yeah. No. Look
at Tom Brady.
Tom Brady probably can't throw the ball 50 yards. But you don't need to. Really. No, you just, I really, if you throw the ball deep in the NFL, it's typically going to be from your release point. If you're on rhythm, I think it's going to be maybe like 49 to 52 yards, somewhere in there. Does that sound about right to you, Justin? You've played football, so you know. Maybe Justin.
Sorry, guys. Say that one more time.
Okay. In the NFL or even in college, like if you're throwing on time and you're throwing say just a simple a go route, the ball is only going to travel through the air or something like I just said 49 to 52 yards. Is that about right to you?
Yeah, that's about right. I feel like the deepest throws from the guys like if Josh Allen chucks one, it's around 60 yards. And it also airtime will depend on who's throwing. Like Russell Wilson is known for just moon balls that stay in the air forever. And
what about that moon ball that Ewers threw on Saturday night?
Why are you bringing that up, Lars?
I don't know if I've seen a ball go that high before, Brian Denny.
Yeah, it was a bomb. It was a bomb.
That was just that was a thing of beauty.
It also helped that the receiver was playing by himself on the field, basically.
He was. No, because he was like, hey, this guy's so wide open, I'm just going to throw it up there and let him run under it.
Took a long time for it to come down, but that receiver was going, oh, come on.
But man, that was a thing of beauty. That was just a stunningly good throw.
He's a stunningly good quarterback. And he's going to.
I would take him. I don't know who. I wouldn't take anybody number one over him right now. I would take him over Caleb Williams.
I would too, because he's just a better passer.
Yeah.
Right now in this game, that's what you need.
You know who he reminds me of? Sorry. Like in terms of arm talent is Jeff George.
I hope he's got a better head.
Yeah, he does. He's a good kid.
Jeff George was funny, but he's just kind of weird and obtuse. He was obtuse. Is that a good word for you?
Yes.
Word, man? Okay.
Yes.
An arrest has been made concerning the actions of, from what I know, one guy on the sideline following the Alabama, or actually during the end of the Alabama-Texas game. Get some quick reaction from Lars and Justin on the other side of the break as we cruise along on Wednesday with Big Noon Sports. If you're, come back on them, but personally, I'd like for them to find the guy and prevent him from going to any other University of Alabama sporting events. And you know what? Here's a good thing. I'm wrong. I'm assuming it was a student. It sounded like a younger guy, but it could have been just a fan. So don't let me indict the students.
Yeah, no,
I'm
not saying it was not saying it was a student, but there are certainly. Of my students, I bet they know somebody who maybe knows somebody who saw what was going on. And that would be like the first lead, and then you just try to unravel it from there. Listening to Big Noon Sports, we will be right back.
Laura Lee Thompson is known as the Bama Broker. She's a Tuscaloosa native, an Alabama graduate, and the only realtor in town with Wall Street experience. A skilled negotiator, Laura Lee knows how to buy low and sell high. And the Bama Broker isn't just going to show you houses. No, Laura Lee is going to educate you on the market, guide you to homes that fit your budget, and teach you how to sell your home for its maximum profit. Throughout the entire process, the Bama Broker will equip equip you with the tools you need to both buy a home and build financial wealth through home ownership. Trust me, the Bama Broker, who's as roll tide as houndstooth, will get you across the goal line. That's Laura Lee Thompson, the Bama Broker with Advantage Realty Group. You can reach her at 205-790-7229. Again, that's 205-790-7229. And you can also email her at lauralee@thebamabroker.com. That's Laura Lee at thebamabroker.com.
Hey, this is Reagan, owner of R&R Cigars, the Cigar Mansion in downtown Tuscaloosa, located at 2703 6th Street across from the Home 2 Suites. Come down to R&R and see why we're the ultimate cigar and bourbon experience. With over 165 bourbons and 5 private barrels, our selection of bourbon is unmatched. We have the best cocktails around and our cigar selection is legendary. Our lounge and service are world class. Come and experience the luxury of the mansion and see why it's a world-renowned cigar and spirits destination.
Justin Jones. Hey, Lars, here's one that I read this morning, and it just made me kind of slap myself on the forehead and said, you're just doing this now? The NFL Players Association is looking into trying to get all fields grass. Seems to me like this would have been one of their lead requests in the last negotiations, Lars.
Yeah, and we talked about this yesterday for a little bit, and Justin, I want to go to you because you have experience playing football. When you have gone back and looked at that at the Aaron Rodgers injury, and that's kind of what they're hanging their hat on, the NFLPA, in making this argument right now. Do you think it would have happened if this had been if MetLife Stadium was grass as opposed to turf?
I don't know. We talked about it yesterday, Lars, on the show, where maybe if it was not turf, his cleat wouldn't have grabbed as much and strained his calf to the point of his Achilles breaking. I know as far as other injuries go, like turf toe and all these other, turf-related injuries, they would be almost completely solved. They would still happen occasionally, I'm sure. But I saw exactly what you're talking about. The NFLPA is kind of making it their number one priority now.
Why hadn't they been doing that in the past? That's my main question of this. I don't quite get it. Player safety should always, it should always be at the top. And the owners should want that because how much did they invest in Rodgers?
And how much money are the Jets going to lose now, say, in merchandise sales and all of the ancillary forms of revenue that Aaron Rodgers is going to generate for them? Everything that they're losing, they could put probably grass in every stadium in the league. They're going to lose millions and millions. Yes, they could put a new grass in the entirety of Central Park from 59th all the way up to 110th. And
Lars, do you think most of the world that hadn't been to New York realizes how big that piece of property is?
Oh, it is. It's the greatest park in the world. And, I've been to Hyde Park in London, which is absolutely beautiful. But Central Park is just stunning because you walk in there and it's like you can't even hear the sounds of the city. It's the only place in the city that you can hear birds and the actual property is just gorgeous. I used to run around the reservoir, which is, I think, 1.4 miles, when I was training for the marathon and even after. It was just, you get these spectacular views.
Can you see the stars from the middle of it?
No. The only time I saw the stars was when there was the power went out in all of New York City because of that squirrel. Yeah, the blackout. The squirrel in Pennsylvania that caused the blackout. And that was quite the evening. We've talked about that.
You told me about the heat. It was, just unbearable. So everybody went to the bars.
Yeah. And everybody's giving away beer for free because the refrigeration was done. It's going to go bad. And in all the the bodegas, everybody's giving the ice cream away for free. It was awesome. It was awesome until you had to actually try to go to sleep. That's why me and my buddies stayed up all night.
I don't know. I can't sleep when it's even a little bit hot. Makes me very uncomfortable. So anyway, all right, Lars. Our thanks again to Jeff Spiegel of ABC 3340 and Mike Rodak from Bama 24/7. Thank you for your time. The man, Tim Brando, love him or not, he's going to be on just tomorrow at 1:15, and can't wait to hear what he's going to say about Saban in Alabama. And don't forget, you can join us live at Innisfree this Friday from noon to 2. How was your chicken wrap last week?
I loved it. I devoured that thing. I was like a man who hadn't eaten in a month.
I've seen your appetite get rather voracious. Hey, Lars, thanks. Good time. Justin Jones, always thanks to you. We'll do this again in 22 hours.
Laura Lee Thompson is known as the Bama Broker. She's a Tuscaloosa native, an Alabama graduate, and the only realtor in town with Wall Street experience. A skilled negotiator, Laura Lee knows how to buy low and sell high. And the Bama Broker isn't just going to show you houses. No, Laura Lee is going to educate you on the market, guide you to homes that fit your budget, and teach you how to sell your home for its maximum profit. Throughout the entire process, the Bama Broker will equip you with the tools you need to both buy a home and build financial wealth through home ownership. Trust me, the Bama Broker, who's as roll-tide as houndstooth, will get you across the goal line. That's Laura Lee Thompson, the Bama Broker with Advantage Realty Group. You can reach her at 205-790-7229. Again, that's 205-790-7229. And you can also email her at lauralee@thebamabroker.com. That's Laura Lee@thebamabroker.com.